The story of our journey matters. So, the typical story I tend to tell about my experience and about finding the truth in my experience is that the non-duality story, when it comes to investigating one's experience, the suggestions tend to be like, feel the presence that's already here, investigate the immediate sensations, thoughts, etc. The elements or aspects of your experience that are supposed that are taken to be separate. Investigate those. That's a typical type of suggestion. I would say even more so on the allow everything to be side of the coin. That's probably even more the typical suggestion when it comes to non-duality and enlightenment teachings, that everything be as it is, which can reinforce a particular type of passivity in relationship to one's body. If you're someone who tends to live small, to shrink in the face of fear, who's maybe shy or anxious around others, and who doesn't want to show how mad you can really get when people do stuff that angers you, you might tend to push that anger down and try to make nice, to the point where you might not even be aware of your anger anymore because you've become so practiced at pushing it down. If you're that type of person with those sorts of tendencies, then the whole non-dual shtick around nothing to do, no one to be, nowhere to go, may reinforce those same tendencies, may be picked up and taken on because subconsciously you want to do what you're already doing. And the benefit with non-duality too is you can tell yourself that you're really chasing a worthwhile goal while continuing to do the same stuff you've already done under a different guise, the different costume. So that's one way it can go bad to follow non-duality. One way we can continue to stifle progress towards what we really want. And that's the other piece of it too, is it is the goal that's described by or promised by non-dual teachings, enlightenment teachings, is that goal what we really want most deeply. So it might be teachings about peace and freedom and joy, happiness, and you hear those words and it's like, yeah, that's what I want. And in my opinion, what else could people really truly want? Love. These sorts of words, they point towards this higher transpersonal sense, these transpersonal qualities, unconditional freedom, love, etc., peace. Who wouldn't want that? And ultimately, our attempts to achieve social or material, financial goals, I still think it all boils down to wanting unconditional love, freedom, peace, joy, etc. I think that's what it really boils down to. Even though it might look like, I just want a new job, I just want a spouse, etc. Because those things will eventually disappoint because they're temporal, they're objective, as in they are objects of mind, of sight, of sound. And those all do flow through, they change. So to set such a goal, the goal in and of itself, the achievement of the goal, the getting the thing that you think you want, in and of itself, isn't going to be satisfactory, because it's not. Like, a new job isn't peace and freedom and joy and love. It's not found in any particular object. Hence the search continued. So when we're talking about enlightenment and these sorts of goals around it, these sorts of desires and wants, a transpersonal desire for love, how much of that desire for the goal is actually experienced in a deep, moving, authentic way, versus how much of it is an object of the mind? Oh, I want peace, I want freedom, I want enlightenment. As a mind object, something you're supposed to achieve, an ideal you're supposed to reach, and then once you do that, you will be free to finally be yourself. You'll finally be deserving of love. Once you get there, it perpetuates the story that I'm already not enough, as I am. I'm deficient in some way. So which of the two is it? And maybe it can be a both and, right? Like, I genuinely, deep in my soul, in my heart, I want love, freedom, peace, joy, more than anything else. And I recognize that fully, consciously, to whatever extent I can. And that goal, that deep desire, is not the only desire I have. I also want to remain safe as this vulnerable human. And safety, it can mean physically safe from people coming to your house and fucking you up. But the majority of our traumas, the events or environments that shape, contour our personality, the limitations of what we will and won't do. So much of this is social. It's not all I was beaten, I was raped. A lot of it is dad didn't love me, mom wasn't there, it didn't feel like anyone cared about my feelings, it didn't feel safe to be angry or else they would withdraw love or threaten to hit me. It's all these social aspects of it because we're social creatures. So safety, when I say it in this context, I don't just mean physically safe, but emotionally safe, socially safe. And how much of our personality is driven by that stuff? I don't want to be judged. I want to be seen in a certain light because I don't want to be judged. These are all the behaviors I take and all the things I think about because ultimately I don't want to be judged. How much control does that have over my patterns of thinking and feeling and acting? And so with all that, there's the simultaneous desires for peace, love, equanimity, a deep feeling that I am valuable, unconditionally valuable. My words have value. I feel like I'm real. I feel authentic. Like these are things that I think everybody wants. And we all want to stay some version of safe. And maybe it's possible that we transcend that desire at some point. I don't know. But it does seem pretty fucking uniform throughout humans that as far as I can tell, and I know it in myself directly, this desire to avoid physical and social, emotional harm. So we have the capacity for either desire, both of them in succession. Maybe one after the other, one stronger now, another one stronger later. The desire ultimately for freedom, joy, love, bliss, and the desire to stay safe as a body moving through a world, as this identity, in all the ways that could look of what staying safe could actually mean for us in both the physical and social, emotional realms. Like it might look a lot of different ways. And underpinning all of it is probably something like, I want to feel as if it's safe for me to be myself, to be authentic, to be real. And for all the emotions and behaviors that come with that, all the ideas that come with that, to be able to be shared without feeling the threat of rejection, without needing to turn on myself and call myself unlovable, needing to turn on myself and judge myself as a way to try to figure out what I'm doing wrong so that I can avoid judgment. If I can just figure out what I'm doing wrong here, then I can correct it and I won't get judged and mom and dad will love me. And then it's safe for me to love myself. So it seems to me like it's both in varying degrees at different times. So with all that said about enlightenment, about the search for it, and all that's wrapped up in that search, our authentic desire, our transpersonal desire, and our personal desires, is the non-dual methodology of just allow everything to be as it is. Is that the best approach for you, or one practice among many for you? Like, where does that actually fit? What's the most skillful place to slot in a practice like that? Is it an effective practice for you? I think that's a better word than good. Is it a good practice? No, it's an effective practice for the purpose of, and then fill in the blank. So that blank at the core of it is likely going to be some sort of transpersonal desire for love, peace, freedom, etc. Is this the most effective practice for the purpose of seeing reality clearly? Because I'm suggesting, and I think teachings like this tend to suggest, that seeing clearly, accurately perceiving reality is intimately correlated with our capacity for intimacy, our capacity for love, intimacy with ourselves and others, healing the split between this small self and the world outside of it, seeing the unity, seeing that love already is the pinnacle, is the foundation of our experience. Seeing that clearly then leads me to experience the love that I thought I didn't have this whole time, or thought I wasn't deserving of this whole time. So perhaps one aspect of an effective practice towards that goal of transcending the personal, to see clearly this deep love that's already here. That either I heard a rumor that that's the case and I want to find out for myself, or I've seen it, I've tasted it, and I need to keep going. So that's your goal, to continue to uncover, discover, fall into, and live in and as this love that's already here. What's the best way of getting there? And I think the best way of getting there, quote unquote, the most effective way is going to be different according to your particular tendencies. Like I mentioned before with Enlightenment teachings, one way it can go wrong is when people who already have an avoidance relationship with anger use the teachings to continue to perpetuate that same relationship dynamic with the emotion of anger, which ultimately is tied to our power. If we can't get angry, if that feels like a limitation, we're not allowed to get angry, we're not someone who gets angry. What's our relationship like with personal power? With our ability to say no, with our ability to choose what's right for ourselves, for our ability to believe and validate our own way of looking at things, our own perceptions of reality, and our own mapping of those perceptions. Even the part of non-duality that says, all thoughts are concepts, all words are concepts, don't believe any of it, right? There's an aspect of that, there's a way that can be applied that's effective, and that can also be used to invalidate my own mapping of the world, of reality. I can use that same teaching to invalidate my way of seeing reality, of ordering it in such a way that I'm able to communicate it to others, that I'm able to say to myself, oh, fuck, like, I see clearly. If I can't explain it, do I really understand it? So it's a way of assimilating information to put it into your own personal map. And instead of engaging in that process of map making in an empowered way and saying my way of seeing things, my view is valid, I see clearly and I can explain it clearly. Instead of doing that, we let non-duality and enlightenment play daddy. We take on an external authority. It doesn't have to be non-duality by any stretch. I mean, we take on a belief system, a religion, a creed that doesn't come from our authentic seeing. Instead, we grasp onto a belief because we think it's going to help us get to where we want to go. And what's the cost of that? One, it continues to undermine our ability to perceive and wield our authentic power. Because on a deep level, I know what I'm doing. Subconsciously, I know what I'm doing. I know that I'm outsourcing my power to a belief system, to another person, to another group, and saying, y'all know what's up. Y'all can help me get from point A to point B to this idea of enlightenment or this whatever goal that I hold. You guys can help me get there. And I can get there by buying into what you say, by being part of the group. But what's really driving this is that search for safety. I want to be part of a group. I don't trust myself. I need someone else to tell me what's safe to believe, what I can think and say without criticism, without fear of criticism. Or if I am going to be criticized, I can other the group that's criticizing me or the people that are criticizing me and say, nah, this in-group that I'm with knows what's up. Fuck you guys. And the group that you're with goes, yeah, man, yeah, you got it. You're right. We got you. We love you. By the way, give us money or fuck me or whatever it is. I'm not trying to say that groups are bad by any stretch or that all groups are totally fucked. It's just that in groups, I think it tends more often than not to tilt towards the search for safety rather than the search for freedom and love. And the group dynamics being supportive of that search for safety at the cost of the search for deeper love and intimacy with one another. The freedom to be, mutual freedom to be. That's what humans tend to do in groups because that's what humans tend to be focused on, is our little searches for safety, which are really driven by not by want. If I'm going to be pretty radical about it, I would say that the only want that we actually have is for that transpersonal sense of love, truth. That's the only real want that we have. And I'll propose too that we can actually use our brains, use our minds to set up goals consciously that are meant to lead us towards love. So we can actually engage in the game of reality. First we define the game, then we create the rules of the game, and then we play the game, right? We have to define the game, what's the goal, what are we trying to accomplish here, what are the rules, and then we play. And we can let that process be dictated to us or we can create it. We can let religion tell us, we can let non-duality tell us, we can let our families tell us, we can let social media tell us, we can let someone tell us, or some group of people tell us what games we should play, how they're defined, what the rules are, which ultimately dictates how we play. We can let outside authorities do that, or we can reclaim our personal power and say, okay, I get to define the game. For example, this enlightenment thing sounds pretty cool. It's vaguely defined. But I don't know that. I just hear words like, oh, it's ultimate love and bliss. And I'm like, okay, cool. That sounds like something I want. Sounds good. Well, that's the goal, this enlightenment thing. The rules include, and this is where it gets really fucking confusing, because the inherent in the goal, the fact that we've chosen non-duality in this example, right? We're coming at this from a place of really being driven by our unconscious desire to stay safe in this example. So like, because of that, there is a slant to the way that I'm going to define this game and create the rule set, which is I really don't want it to be about me having to reclaim and exercise my personal power. I would really rather continue to play small and believe that I'm a limited self insofar as that means I don't have to express my anger. That's a trade-off I'm willing to make. So I'm going to define this game in the rule set such that I get to cater to that desire to deny that I get fucking angry, that I get to continue to ignore that I'm mad. So the rules are going to look something like see through. I guess this is more part of the goal, is to see through the see that all thought is empty, including angry thoughts. See that there's no personal will. Oh, yeah, that's great. No personal will means I don't have to do shit. I just sit on a fucking couch and stare at the wall, right? That's bliss, that's enlightenment. What am I leaving out? Conveniently, what am I leaving out? What possibilities am I leaving out if that's what peace looks like? That's what transcendental peace looks like to me. That's my understanding, which I'm understanding through the lens of my current capacity to understand, right? Which is a little bit influenced by my desire to not experience and show anger, right? If I'm looking at things through that lens already, sitting on a couch and staring at a wall and that looking like peace, oh great, yes, that fits. That fits the ultimate agenda of staying safe. So that'll be part of the rule set. This is what peace looks like. Peace looks like. This will be part of the goal, is that peace, I want to look peaceful, and peace looks like this. Peace looks like sitting down, talking really fucking slow, not reacting in anger ever. That's what peace looks like. That's how I'm defining it. And by the way, that way of defining it is totally innocent because I don't fucking know any better. If I were already someone who was comfortable with my anger, I'd be able to define it with that understanding of what it means to be in touch with your own personal power. But I don't, so I can't. And therefore, I'm going to set up the game with this intention in mind, unless I can become really conscious of the fact that I'm doing it and then not do it. But unless someone's specifically guiding me in that way, which is not what that group is necessarily trying to do, right? The group of non-duality followers, like a lot of them are probably there for the same ultimate reason that you are, is because they want to stay quote unquote peaceful. So they'd actually prefer that you don't rock the boat. And the way you're defining it sounds perfect to them. So cool. Yes. They're not going to necessarily try to help you in this regard unless their search is actually defined more by the authentic drive to awaken to what reality actually is, whatever that means. And in that case, if there are more people in the group like that, then the whole culture of the group's going to be different. And you may not even be attracted to it in the first place. But if you do end up there, then you'll how fucking awesome is that? How fucking great. Anyway, so in this example, goal is to not express anger. But ostensibly, the goal is to achieve freedom and peace. What are the rules? What are the rules of the game? Don't think too much. Don't think too much. Thoughts are the enemy. Thoughts are bad. Don't think. You're doing something wrong if you're thinking. And definitely don't tell other people that you think. And if you do it with a lot of shame and guilt. Like kind of put your head down as you say it, oh, I've been thinking too much. I think a lot. My mind is really fast. And like put your head down and be like, oh, and everyone go, oh, that's okay. It's fine. We're just going to let that be as it is too. It's okay. Or, oh, one day you'll get there. It's cool. Right? But what does the speed of thought, like, is that really an indicator? Not even an indicator. Is that really a method for, right? Because there's also a difference between a metric, an indicator, and a method for, right? So where does that actually fall? Perhaps speed of the mind, the number of compulsive thoughts that arise throughout the day, is a metric that one can check to see, oh, okay, how is this actually going, right? I would say it's that at best. And it's definitely not a method, particularly in this circumstance. So what tends to happen is I'm not supposed to think, and it's like a further invalidation of my own personal ability to create an accurate map of reality and to create my own game. I say no to myself. I say, no, you're not smart enough to figure this out. You don't see clearly enough to figure it out. Let's outsource our power to someone else and they can tell us what to do. So don't think too much. Don't get mad. Really don't feel any emotional disturbance. So anyway, we start creating this game, and then let's go down the rules a little bit more actually. So these are some of the metrics that I look for. I don't want to be thinking too much. I don't want to be getting mad, showing anger. And I'm already off track because I'm already playing a game that's really not taking me beyond the limits of my personality. I'm playing a game that's reinforcing those limits. Okay. And then what do I end up doing? I end up trying to forcefully quiet my thoughts, which is getting further out of touch with my emotional body by trying to suppress my thinking so that I can live up to this image that I bought into, which is a further separation from yourself. So there's likely some grief associated with that. Maybe some shame. Maybe you're mad about it, that someone else is misleading you, isn't seeing you clearly and going, oh, hey, it looks like what's really going on here is this, but you're chasing that. Someone's not actually grabbing you by the hand and guiding you toward what's really good for you. Instead, they're allowing you to have these misperceptions. So in a way, it's like mom and dad still aren't there. And it's sad that it's reinforcing the same dynamics that you've been trying to solve your whole life. Still not getting it. And I'm doing it to me. I'm doing it to myself. I'm not listening to myself enough to know what's actually good for me. And then creating a game that's actually conducive to transcending those limitations and loving myself. Fuck, I'm that disconnected from me. That's sad. There's grief associated with that. But meanwhile, I'm playing a game where I'm actually trying to not feel things and not show emotions, because that's how I get seen as the peaceful one in the group, which is what we're all striving to. And it ends up becoming a social bargaining chip. So I definitely don't want to show emotion. Definitely don't want to show emotion. So now we're just full on lying to ourselves, telling ourselves that we're playing this game that's about peace and freedom and love and transcendence, while we're really playing a game of the same old shit with a different mask. So now if we go back and look at the suggestions from non-duality enlightenment teachings to let everything be as it is. Don't think too much. If you're thinking too much, let go of those thoughts. Just come back to presence. Continue to rest in presence. There's nobody here. There's nothing to do. Is that, as the entirety of one's practice, really the best practice, the most effective practice for you with your particular tendency? And guess who can answer that question? Only you. Only you. And if you're in a position where you feel really out of touch with your personal power, good to be clear on that and get some guidance. But ultimately, any good guidance is going to be leading you back to your own guidance system. It's going to be leading you back to getting in touch with your own ability to discern for yourself what's true and what's not true, what's most effective and less effective, what your actual goals are, what you really want, what you're already doing, what you're actually doing, the loops you're caught up in, the behaviors that are working for you or against you, defined by you, right? Whatever working for or against means for you, because of what you actually want, because of your actual goals, your actual desire. And there's good news in that desire might be universal within all of us, that all humans might want the same thing. It's possible all beings want the same thing. Any conscious being, why wouldn't any conscious being want unconditional love, unconditional freedom, bliss? Why not? So it's possible we all want the same thing underneath all of the costumes and rules we play and running from ourselves that we do and chasing safety, innocently chasing safety. So that's great news. That means someone else who's made some progress might be able to help you out, because they can see you clearly, maybe more clearly than you're seeing yourself at the moment. They don't have a personal agenda, or at least a reduced personal agenda. Personal agenda meaning the agenda to make themselves safe at all costs, right? They may have seen through a lot of the trappings associated with that. Some people might call that a reduced ego. I like to call it a healing of the split between myself and the world. I get to see that there's love here underneath all of it, and that love is not something that I keep and hoard. That love's universal, or else it's not love. Love doesn't want to be held back, restrained, kept in a box. So someone like that is going to want the best for you. And that doesn't mean they want the best for you like, I want for you what I think is best for you. It means you are a conscious, sovereign being. I respect that sovereignty. You tell me what you want. And if you can't, I want to help you be able to find out what you actually want. And then I want to help you get that. Because underneath it, I think you want the same thing I want. I know you do. I know you do. It might look different, but we're the same. So if you're out of touch with your own personal power, getting in touch with someone who can help mirror the good parent, and that's not someone who's always going to let you slide necessarily, or baby and coddle you. There's an element of effective parenting where we're trying to help the child be independent, autonomous. It's not all coddling. Sometimes it's something like coddling. It's holding space for your emotions, allowing you to be as you are without judgment, feeling compassion for you, and it's lovingly pointing out the areas where you're bullshitting yourself and helping you stop doing things that you don't really want to do, that are driven by not want. I don't want to be angry because I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to be judged. That's driven by an overemphasis on, it's driven by the execution of our capacity to not choose love, to not see that love is already here and ever present, and to choose the story by which we're not worthy of it. To do that as a way to stay safe from judgment, from rejection, abandonment, non-acceptance. We make the acceptance of other people more important than our own ability, our own power to choose love regardless of circumstance. Because, the story goes, there was a point in our lives where we didn't have that power. We were just a wee baby. And our parents, our teachers, our friends, were just the latest in a long, long, long tradition of being disconnected from the innate love, the innate capacity to love that is present within reality. Instead, choosing out of fear to focus on, to create, to generate, to perpetuate the stories of selves that aren't worthy of that love for one reason or another, and being themselves. Our caregivers were just playing a game as old as time, and we learned to play the same game. And thus the story continues. So now here we are, faced with a choice, assuming we have the power to choose it in every moment. The choice to love, to invest in, to validate the existence of, to perpetuate love over the other thing. The fear that I'm this small separate self that will die, unloved by anybody, rejected by people, to be victimized and brutalized. So how do I create a game whereby I don't perpetuate that story anymore of victimhood? And granted, you might want to word all of this completely differently. Perhaps for you, the more passive definitions of methodologies to come more in tune with or in touch with reality, perhaps those definitions serve you better, those games serve you better. And if you have the personal power to make that discernment, awesome, do that. I grant you your freedom to define reality in any way you see fit. I don't really doubt that practices like that have helped people increase their capacity for love and freedom. I have no doubt about that. So in that case, that's part of the answer. How you define the game, you recognize what's already working for you, and do more of that. You notice what's not working, define it. What is this actually? This pattern that I keep getting sucked into, what are the components of it? What is it? What's its goal? What's this pattern trying to achieve? And then creatively come up with a game that circumvents that pattern, and doing it without self-hatred or self-recrimination. So like, one way this could go, for instance, is, it's self-defeating for me to gorge on donuts every day, right? Maybe there's something going on underneath that, like an emotion that I'm trying to get away from, a feeling like there's a lack of love here, and I'm covering that over with sugar. Maybe I know that or I don't know that. And then what could happen in the goal is like, well, I'm going to work out fucking 7 days a week for an hour, and I'm going to eat like no food, and there becomes this overcompensation, this goal that's actually laden with innate judgment that the self that you already are isn't good enough. And it's reinforcing the same story, the same underlying story. Well, the self that eats donuts isn't good enough, but the self that doesn't eat donuts and looks like that one is worthy of love. Again, reinforcing that this one that I am right now isn't worthy of love. So I'm going to continue to not love myself, but try to exercise myself into being a better person. I'm going to hate myself into being a more lovable self. I don't think that works. If it does work, I'm not sure it's sustainable. And if it is sustainable, if you could just hate yourself into making positive changes in your life, do those positive changes actually help you arrive at the underlying universal goal of feeling the inherent love and freedom in reality? By which way are we actually defining positive in that context? So when I'm creating a game, check for, as much as possible, and this might be a continuous process, the ways in which I play the game or define the game that reinforce my unlovability, that reinforce that I'm not already this beautiful creature that's so deserving of all the beautiful things life has to offer. How do I reinforce that I'm unworthy of love? In the way that I draw up the games. See that clearly, as best as you can. And don't judge yourself for when you miss it, for when you have been doing that to yourself and not recognizing it, because there's going to be some feelings about that. You'll need to forgive yourself, but that's a healthier direction to go. Like, oh my God, I've been absent as a parent from myself, so to speak. There's a sense of this hurt, broken child here that I have not been parenting correctly, because I was modeled to parent myself by my parents, who were modeled by their parents, by their parents, by their parents, in this tradition of self-hate. So naturally, there's a bit of a lag time. There's karma that needs to play out. The conditioning needs to unwind in its own timing. And I don't want to say the conditioning needs to unwind in its own timing as a way to perpetuate the conditioning. So, it's a reason to be kind with yourself, to forgive yourself, and to feel what it's like to judge yourself, actually, underneath the surface, underneath the frenetic mental activity. What's it actually feel like emotionally to do that to yourself? It's painful. It's painful to do that. So with that said, how can we most clearly see what we're already doing, and then define the rules of engagement, define the goals and the rules of engagement in such a way that I support my continual unfolding into love, my continual realization of the fact that love is already here. What's the most effective way for me?